Well, good morning, everybody. How's everyone feeling? It was so wonderful to see so many of you at yoga this morning. Do you all feel sort of bright and relaxed now, huh? Well, there's some very weary people here by the looks of things. Well, we've certainly got a day to really wake you up. This morning we've got an amazing interactive session where we hope that by the end of it you'll have actually gotten your hands dirty and really understood the implications of the decisions that are made with your stakeholders within the CSR environment. Our facilitator today is John Morton. Over the last 24 hours, a number of people have commented on the amazing work that professional public relations have done. John, in fact, I met with over a year ago, and he very quickly saw the importance of CSR and where it was moving within this country. And I'm absolutely thrilled with the partnership. And when I say partnership, it's been an extraordinary partnership. They have contributed incredible resources to make this happen, and they're right behind it. John's going to make a great facilitator day. He's the General Manager of Professional Public Relations here in Sydney, and I'd like to have you all join me in both thanking PPR for helping make this event what it is today and in joining him to the podium as facilitator today. Thank you.
Anne-Marie, thank you very much. That wasn't on the script, so it's not in my notes. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Good morning and welcome to day 2 of a very exciting conference. For those of you who were around yesterday, it was very thought-provoking. There were excellent presentations, and the point is that it's a very ambitious program, and it's an ambitious program again today. So we really will try to keep things flowing very quickly, give you as much opportunity for questions, but I will be quite strict on time. As Anne-Marie explained, my name, John Morton. I'm from Professional Public Relations. We're communicators. I'm not a CSR practitioner. In fact, CSR for me, before I met Anne-Marie, was a very good Australian sugar company. And then I thought it was a fad, and then I read a couple of books, and now I actually think it's a very smart way that businesses go about winning in today's environment at nobody's expense. I guess I feel that there are a number of very special mentions that should go out today. So firstly, to Anne-Marie, who's been able to take a vision and turn it into a conference. To the Australian and international speakers, particularly those who have travelled so far to come and present to you today. A very big thank you to our sponsors and supporters, and there are many. A special mention to the people that have gone about producing the video you've just seen. It is actually part of a documentary that is being produced on sustainability and future business solutions, and the directors are actually here over the next couple of days. So if anybody's interested in becoming involved in that video, being part of it, financing it, helping direct. Their business cards are in your satchel, and you can get those from the registration desk. So my first question today to kick things off is actually, what does CSR mean for you? You've heard me say that it meant sugar, and then it meant fad, and then it meant a way that businesses actually go about delivering to all their different stakeholders. So what I want you to do, I know we're very spread out, but I want you to turn to the person next to you, just introduce yourself, and tell them in one sentence what CSR means for you. Can you do that for me for 30 seconds? Thank you, guys. What I want you to do is I want you to lock that thought away. Guys, I want you to lock the thought away on what CSR means for you right now, and then we'll revisit that at the end of the day. I'll be very interested to see whether it has changed as a result of the thinking and the presentations you're going to see today. Now look, something that you might have gathered by now is that I'm actually not a professional facilitator. Funny. What I am is a communicator, and as a communicator, what I understood was that corporate social responsibility is one of the very unique ways that organisations go about relating better to their various stakeholders. So when I look around the room and I see the people whose responsibility it is for corporate social responsibility, I look at you as people who is responsible for doing good. Our responsibility as communicators is telling people about it, and I think that's really important. And I'm going to stand in front of you, and you can chat to me throughout the day on the basis that it is one thing to implement and to have a strategy that is about how organisations demonstrate their preparedness to be responsible and to interact with their stakeholders. But if you don't tell people about it, it doesn't become real. and those stakeholders don't get to touch and feel what your organisation is really about. They don't understand the values. They see a brand, they might even understand a little bit about it, but they don't understand what you are really about and what you're about into the future. So I guess one of the next questions I wanted to cover off was, and I wanted your thoughts on this as we go through the day, is CSR just a very nice description? We've finally got some terminology that we can apply to what very smart and successful companies have been doing for a very long time. Developing strategies that enhance their reputation and help them relate better to their various publics. It could be one way that we view it, or we could actually go a little deeper and say, is this a deeply ingrained way that businesses of tomorrow define their markets, define their products and services, and therefore define their very existence? You can debate that for days, so I want you to think about that as we go through the day and listen to our various speakers. But before we get to our first speakers, which is a very, very interactive session, and it's fantastic that we are a small group at the moment, and you'll get the most benefit out of the next couple of hours up to lunchtime. But I need to cover off some housekeeping issues. There will be great opportunities for questions. So we have roving microphones, so I'll get you to put up your hand. Because we are being filmed for this wonderful documentary, I'll get you to introduce yourselves, your name and where you're from, and wait for the microphone and then give our speakers a chance to respond to your questions. We will ask you to stick to the breaks and keep this thing on time. We've taken a decision to kick off on time today so that we can get through as much of the program as possible. I'd love you to take the time during the breaks to stop and talk to our exhibitors. They've come along because they actually are interested in the issues that you're interested in. And even there's free health checks, and getting to this time of the year, I know I'm going to find out about stress levels. So go and lie down with one of the guys on the health checks. I will be keeping everyone to time, so no disrespect if anyone's been on a plane for 24 hours from London. When they're over time, they're over time. We will keep them to that. Toilets are located straight out the back, and to the left is an internet cafe courtesy of Higher Intelligence. So please feel free to use all the resources of the Hilton today. So with no further ado, let's kick off the program. Let's get to our first speakers, and let's look at the topic of how one integrates CSR into the organisation and its strategic planning process. Because one of the observations that I've had is that, having been here yesterday and having chatted already to a couple of people this morning, there's lots of nodding and lots of when it comes to the rhetoric of corporate social responsibility. Everyone kind of gets it. But do they actually get it when it comes to how do I apply it? When push comes to shove in the real-life business environment, with real-life business goals, with shareholders demanding return on investment, with everybody driven towards a bottom line, does theory fall by the wayside, and can we actually take this discipline and embed it into the organisation? So these are the challenges that Dr. Leeora Black from the Australian Centre of Corporate Social Responsibility, which is an Australian-based company, it's a leading consulting, training and research organisation, is going to take you through with the help of James Chisholm, who's come to us all the way from Canada. James's company, Experience Point, is highly regarded in the area of e-learning and has developed the software, the program that you're going to see, which is ExperienceCSR. This is an award-winning piece of e-learning simulation software, which will allow us to put the theories of corporate social responsibility to the test. So we've got all morning with Leeora, James and 30-odd PCs. And I guess on that note, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you start touch typing, and I'm going to ask Leeora to come and take us through the first simulation of the day.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John. Good morning, everybody. My name's Leeora Black from the Australian Centre for Corporate Social Responsibility, and we're absolutely delighted to be here participating at the CSR Summit and supporting the CSR Summit. We've got a fantastic program for you this morning, together with James Chisholm from Experience Point in Canada, and I'm absolutely thrilled, beyond thrilled, that James has been able to come out here, his first trip to Australia, specifically for our session this morning. The Australian Centre for Corporate Social Responsibility has as its mission helping organisations become more socially responsible. So wherever your organisation is in its journey, you're ready to take the next step, that's what we do to help you. And we do that primarily through our capability building approach. We have a particular framework, a validated framework for understanding and developing the capabilities for social responsibility. And we do that through consulting, research and training. ExperienceCSR is our flagship program for teaching about CSR strategy and tactics. Yesterday you heard a lot about what corporate social responsibility is. You heard a lot about why we should do corporate social responsibility. Well, this morning the rubber hits the road. Here's how we do it. We will have a very exciting interactive session this morning. There'll be lots of prizes, so please get in there and participate. There will be prizes not just for the winners. There'll be prizes for all sorts of reasons, for having a go, for having a good conversation, for selecting a good string of tactics, for doing funny tricks. Whatever you can think of, if you are really keen on getting a prize, there'll be a prize. But it's not all about prizes, it's really about learning about CSR strategy, and it's my great pleasure to introduce James Chisholm to come and tell you about Experience Point, the company behind ExperienceCSR.
Thanks, Leeora. Thank you, Leeora. It's fabulous to be here down under. I had a tremendous time. I've been here for a few days beforehand, and I just love Australia. I can't wait to come back. A bit of history before we get started. I was one of the co-founders of Experience Point about 10 years ago, coming out of the School of Business at Queen's University. And my business partner and I looked at the worlds of video games and looked at the worlds of adult education and sought to bridge the two. And ExperienceCSR, the simulation that you're playing today, is one of the simulations that we have that does, in fact, bridge those two worlds. ExperienceCSR was developed in cooperation with the University of Toronto, St. Michael's College. And they have a certificate program in corporate social responsibility. So this particular simulation was developed in partnership with them for that particular certificate program for executive education. Experience Point, we've worked with a variety of organizations over the last 10 years, from the United Nations to the US Navy to Habitat for Humanity and dozens of Fortune 1000 companies. In that time, I know that with this type of simulation, I can guarantee three things. The first is that you'll be challenged. The simulation is really tough. We've got 30 teams here, and I expect about 10 teams to hit the objective today. So it's one thing to know about CSR, it's another to actually implement it and do it. The second thing that I know that we'll get out of this morning is that we'll have a look at some key tactics around CSR and the timing of those tactics. And the evaluative model that sits underneath this is a change management best practice model. So when is the best time to implement certain tactics for this particular organization, SkyTech, and as well for your own organizations? And the third thing I can promise is that you'll have a lot of fun. It's a pretty kind of intense experience. It's a competitive experience. We're doing today over the next, well, I guess we've got 3 hours and 45 minutes, what we typically do in 5.5 hours or so. So we know we've got a brilliant crowd here, so it'll be no problem whatsoever. But it'll be a lot of fun, and it's a pretty intense experience. We're immersing you into a situation, and it's incumbent upon you to really help this organization and implement a CSR strategy. Just grab this. Okay, so your assignment, as I mentioned, you're acting as advisors going into this organization called SkyTech. And SkyTech has a series of stakeholders both within the organization and outside of the organization that you're trying to implement a CSR strategy to get their buy-in, to get their commitment to your new objective. Okay, now as I mentioned, SkyTech is it's a designer, manufacturer, and marketer of global positioning systems. And you'll have in front of you here, around the various different laptops, there's a player's guide. And that player's guide is where we'll start this morning, in addition to some interviews. And in that player's guide is some background information about SkyTech. There are a variety of different memos from different stakeholders, as well as a brief company history to give you some context around some of the issues that are faced at SkyTech. Again, its operational practices are under scrutiny by the investment community. And it has never had a formal CSR strategy. In fact, over the years, it's been rather ad hoc. They do a lot of things in the community, but again, it's been rather ad hoc. And it's incumbent upon you to formalize this and create a comprehensive strategy for the organization. Now, as a manufacturer of GPS systems, they operate in both the commercial marketplace as well as in the military marketplace. So there are some issues around that as well, both from the media's perspective as well as internal in the organization that you'll need to consider. So what we'll do today, we'll go through 3 distinct phases. The first is analyze the situation. We'll do a diagnostic on what's going on in the organization and what things we need to consider when implementing our strategy. So that diagnostic will take place over the next 45 minutes or so. And it'll include taking a look at the case studies there, the background information, as well as talking to key stakeholders in the organization. And I'll show you how that works in a couple of seconds. Then what we'll do from that stage is we'll move into a planning phase where we present you with 50 things that you can do, 50 CSR tactics. And it'll be incumbent upon you as a team of 3 or 4 folks to select the right timing for each of those tactics. And then the final phase, we'll implement it and see what happens in the organization. And hopefully we all succeed. So with that, I'd like to just turn our attention to the computer here. And you should be seeing in front of you a map. It's a visual of the organization. Much like this right here, okay? These are the various different stakeholders, both on the left-hand side, internal to the organization SkyTech, and on the right-hand side, you'll notice a number of other different stakeholders. Folks like Ruth Sanders from the Environment Agency, or George Toner from the local business newspaper. We have Mary Lewis from the United Way, and Lynn Patel from Project Head Start. So over the next 45 minutes, what we'll do is read through some of the background material and talk to these various different stakeholders. So let's start off, let's talk to George in the Business Daily. So I'm going to click on George's name. I'll just do this myself here. Click on George's name. Up pops George. He sort of looks like George Lucas, I think. And we can click on what he thinks the problem is.
SkyTech is a local company that has grown successfully into an important global force in its industry. We'd like to put them under the microscope and run.
And you can also hit close and shut anybody down at any given time. And they don't seem to get offended, so that's okay. So again, for each of these stakeholders.
Just a second, we'll just get someone's jump forward.
Okay, we'll do that.
Just hold on there for a second.
I'll come around to each of the different teams here. If you're having any problems at all, there's Charles in the back here and myself, and we'll troubleshoot any issues that you do have. But again, you can talk up to 8 different questions for each of these different stakeholders. It's going to be really loud in here. We typically don't run it in this type of setting. Often it's teams of 4 to 6 working in a breakout room, typically on their own. So again, I would ask you to think about your colleagues around you and keep the volume at a level that you think that you can hear things. But again, it's going to be crazy. For the next 45 minutes, it'll be a bit crazy. After that, it'll settle down a little bit as we get into the planning and the implementation phases. Okay? Now, I notice we do have a couple of computers down here. And I know we do have folks naturally clumping in the back, as I often do. I would encourage you to find some colleagues, some teammates, at least 2 or 3 per team, and find some of the open computers here and head right in. Any questions before we start? So 45 minutes or so, again, to interview these various different stakeholders, get a sense of what's going on at SkyTech, as well as read through some of the notes in the player's guide. And we'll be circulating. Just put your hand up if you have any questions at all, and Leeora and I will be circulating throughout. Okay, good luck.
Has everybody finished interviewing their stakeholders? I know that you'll be able to go on for a long, long time, but we need to move things along. In a full-day workshop situation with ExperienceCSR, you would have had the player's guide circulated to you in advance, and you would have come to the workshop fully briefed already on the situation of SkyTech, and you would be spending a little longer interviewing the stakeholders. Now, interviewing your stakeholders is something that in real life never ends. We've got to put an end to it this morning, though, simply for purposes of moving on through the game. You have already probably gathered an impression about SkyTech. It's got some diverse and complex stakeholders. They're not all on the same page. There are conflicting agendas, there are secret agendas. Everybody wants a piece of the CSR pie for all kinds of different reasons, and your job as the advisor to SkyTech is to navigate through those complex organisational politics, whatever you want to call it, and come up with a strategy that is going to get the buy-in of the stakeholders. Now, ExperienceCSR is a web-based simulation. When we do workshops with ExperienceCSR, all of the participants get a 3-month individual user access account to take home with them so that they can continue to experiment and play the game and access all of the resources on the website over a period of 3 months after the workshop. We unfortunately don't have that available for everybody today, but we are going to give away one free user access account, and Jeremy will be wandering around throughout the course of the morning. Here's Jeremy, and he's got a nice shiny green box. And if anybody would like to be in the draw for a free ExperienceCSR 3-month user access account, pop your business card in there and we'll draw that before lunch today. Jerry's very pleased with his role as the box carrier. And we will draw that this morning, so somebody will have the chance. Now that's not all of the prizes, there are other prizes as well, and I'll mention them as we go through. Okay, so you've seen a little bit about SkyTech, you formed an impression of SkyTech. SkyTech is a company that is on the brink, in my view. It could go either way. You make a series of good decisions and put in place a very good CSR strategy, and SkyTech is destined to become top of the corporate responsibility index. SkyTech is destined to become the leader in its category in the DJSI. But you make a series of poor decisions or poor tactics, and SkyTech is going to be on the front page of a financial review for all kinds of bad reasons. And if you are the manager who has sent SkyTech to the front page of the financial review for all kinds of bad reasons, in real life you'll be walking the plank. Lucky today it's only a game. You will be charged with the mission this morning of creating a strategy for SkyTech. A good corporate social responsibility strategy has 5 key action areas, and what I'll do over the next 20 minutes or so is talk about the areas of CSR strategy that are important, and also talk about a 7-step CSR change management plan. So it's not only important what you do or how you do it, but the order in which you do it. Sometimes a particular tactic or set of tactics will work very well, and other times it won't. It'll either have no effect or it'll be counterproductive. So you need to understand change management best practice so that you can make informed decisions about what are the best tactics to roll out in particular situations and in what order. But before making your choices about those tactics, there's 5 areas in the game where you can make decisions about CSR strategy, 5 key action areas, and I'll run through them very quickly. The first area is business ethics, and that refers to the responsibility to conduct and report on the affairs of the business honestly, and to put in place processes which ensure that employees at all levels understand, respect and behave to a high legal and moral standard. So business ethics, one of the 5 pillars of CSR strategy. Second pillar of CSR strategy, employee relations, and we did hear quite a bit about diversity issues yesterday. Employee relations in the game refers to the responsibility to ensure that employees are treated fairly and well, and with dignity and with consideration for their goals and aspirations. Third area of CSR strategy that you can make choices about this morning, human rights. Human rights refers to the responsibility to be aware of the human rights record and practices of localities in which a business operates, and to do nothing which condones or supports the abuse of or the denial of basic human rights. Now, sometimes sitting here in Australia we're very comfortable. It's hard to imagine that human rights is the real corporate social responsibility issue for some of us. For SkyTech it's a very real issue. In a particular company, the amount of emphasis that you might give to each one of these 5 pillars might vary. Some of these pillars for some companies will be more important than for others, but for SkyTech all of these things are important, and there are human rights issues for SkyTech which you may have observed as you were talking to the stakeholders and perhaps flicking through the player's guide. Community investment, the 4th pillar of corporate social responsibility. That refers to the responsibility to form a relationship with local communities and involve them in business issues which have an impact on them. And it might include philanthropic or giving and support. It might include all kinds of community engagement programs. Environmental sustainability, the 5th pillar. You'll hear lots of arguments from people about environmental sustainability being the most important thing, or CSR is part of sustainability, or sustainability is part of CSR. In ExperienceCSR, environmental sustainability is one of the pillars of corporate social responsibility, and that is the responsibility of a business to be aware of all of the significant environmental impacts, both present and future, of its operations, and to put in place practices and controls to mitigate pollution, depletion, waste, and all kinds of other forms of environmental destruction. The real-world implementation of corporate social responsibility will usually involve at least some tactics from each of these 5 areas. Which is the right emphasis in your company back out in the real world, you will know. But for SkyTech, a suggestion of advice on how to do well in the game, SkyTech does need to attend to all 5 of these areas. So your job is to transform the organisation. And to do so, you're going to have to convert all of the stakeholders that you've met so far this morning into active supporters for corporate social responsibility. You need to remember that change is a process. I'm going to present to you now a 7-step CSR change model. As we go through the 7 steps, you may think, oh my goodness, my organisation has missed out step number 2, or we started at stage number 5, or we haven't done number 1 yet, but we're already operating at number 4. Don't panic. Organisations in the real world typically move through the 7-stage change process in a cyclical and an iterative way. And as new issues come up and new stakeholders emerge and new things happen, you often will go back to earlier components of your change process. So I'm presenting it in a linear fashion as a step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, but in the real world you will generally be going back in circles and in iterative ways. So the aim to get change going is to understand your present state. You'll move to a transition state and ultimately to get stakeholders through to that desired state. Step 1. Diagnose the situation. Gather information. You've already started to do that. Turn on my mic. Thank you. I thought I was. Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me the same? Can you hear me better now? Okay, that's great. Thank you. First step in your 7-step change model, diagnosis, gathering information through interviews and understanding the forces for and against you. You've already begun that first stage through your stakeholder interviews, but there may be some tactics in the game that you would like to add to consider further diagnosis or benchmarking. Remember, it makes sense. Figure out what you've got before you decide what you're going to do. Step number 1, diagnosis. Step number 2, create a vision. The vision describes where you want to go. You don't actually have to script a vision for SkyTech in the game today, but you will have to decide how SkyTech is going to design its vision and strategy, and there'll be choices in the game about how you're going to create that vision and strategy. A vision is basically a description of a desired end state. It's how you would like to see your perfect or your better world. That's the vision. A good vision is people-focused. It has to resonate on a personal level with the values that stakeholders hold, including the values of people inside the organisation. And it has to show them how CSR can have a positive impact on what's important to them. It has to be tangible with concrete attributes and should convey a clear picture of the future state. It needs to appeal to all of the stakeholders, so determining and creating a vision that has broad appeal both internally and externally, especially when you have stakeholders with conflicting or competing demands, as most organisations do, it is not such an easy thing perhaps to find the vision that is going to have broad appeal across all of those stakeholders. It has to be attainable. Has to be flexible, but it usually will be a significant departure from where you are now. In other words, it has to be concrete enough to be achievable in terms of where you are now. It needs to be a bridge between where you are now and where you want to go in the future. It should be very focused and address fundamental challenges in the business and not peripheral ones, and it has to be really simple so that anyone in the organisation can explain it in 5 minutes or less. Once you've got your vision, step 3, establish your CSR structures. There might be 2 kinds of structures. You might have a transitional structure for corporate social responsibility in the early stages that will help with the visioning and motivating job, and eventually you'll look for a permanent CSR structure. Sometimes the choice for a champion to lead the CSR structure is obvious, sometimes it's not. but the individual will be selected from among many candidates. I wonder if any of you have already thought, as you've interviewed your stakeholders, if any of those candidates are suitable to be the CSR champion for SkyTech. Something to think about. As you move from a transitional to a permanent structure, you'll be looking probably to develop a CSR coordinating committee. Now, this is something that is much more challenging than it sounds, because when you think about where does corporate social responsibility occur inside a typical organisation, it's all over the place. Business ethics might be the responsibility of the board of directors. Employee relations might be the responsibility of the human resources people. Human rights might sit back in the board of directors again. Community investment might belong to the corporate affairs or the public affairs team, and environmental sustainability might be in operations. And you need a structure that is going to bring together all of these different areas of expertise, the groups of people in organisations that look after different issues and look after different kinds of stakeholders. So your permanent structure will want to pull in people from all of those parts of the business. Okay, step 4. Get your plans together, formulate your plans, establish measures and targets. You might look to some of the indices that are around you, such as the Corporate Responsibility Index or the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, to get an idea of what stakeholders' expectations are. But you will need to establish plans with measures and targets. Important planning pitfalls to avoid, inconsistent silos. Your CSR planning does need to work in coordination with the regular business planning cycle. Okay, if it's on a different cycle from business planning, you may end up with competing priorities or inadequate resources and difficulties with your performance management process. Plans that aren't coordinated across the company might end up contradicting each other and will end up really shooting yourself in the foot at the end of the day. Because you may end up with CSR plans that only provide superficial attention to some of your important issues. Step 5, motivate and communicate. Now, I should emphasise here that we are 5 steps into a 7-step change model, and we are still talking about what's going on inside the organisation. We're talking about motivating to the employees and communicating the employees. We're still not going outside the boundaries of the organisation. So when do we get to tell everybody how good we are? Much later. So methods for sharing information and making expectations clear, engaging employees in particular projects. Your aim at this stage with the motivating and the communicating stage is to really create some dissatisfaction with the status quo and a shared desire to move to a better way of doing business, to really shake things up and create a new set of aspirations in the business that people will really go for. Otherwise, we'll find it hard to get that deeply embedded change program. Of course, the general principles of communication about consistent messages and promoting by example and repetition and so on apply just as much dealing with your internal audiences as it would with any external piece of communication. Step 6, starting to act now, aligning your systems and your structures. The CSR planning needs to be integrated with the normal strategic and business planning processes. Some of the things that are really important to include at this point in your planning are performance measures. Make sure that you have your key performance indicators and measures for corporate social responsibility fully integrated. This is really hard to do, and I must say that I've seen many organisations well down the path in corporate social responsibility that have got some good achievements under their belt that are still struggling with how they align their systems and their structures for corporate social responsibility. So that's why I said to you at the beginning that I presented it as a linear process, but the reality is that you do go through iterative stages and going back and revisiting some of these stages and getting them sorted in a better way. Some of the organisations here today that are well advanced in corporate social responsibility may nevertheless find that by looking at this CSR change management model, that there are steps in the change management model that they may feel that really need to be revisited. If you're at that point where you've been driving your CSR program now for 2 or 3 or 5 years and you feel like you're up against a wall and it's not moving and you're hitting potholes and there is resistance still in your organisation to corporate social responsibility, it is a very good idea idea to take a look again at the 7-step change management model, because there may be pieces that you need to revisit to help you get through the next hurdle, get over the next stage. Structural considerations are really important. Getting the right people in the right positions, promoting people who understand corporate social responsibility values and who lead by example. These shifting power between units, it sends a signal. One of the typical tactics for shifting power and signalling power and getting the right people in the right team that I would always recommend is getting a board committee on corporate social responsibility. Somebody once said to me, it's once the board committee is established, it's very hard to unestablish or to disestablish it. So think about those structural considerations that are going to really put CSR high up on the agenda and are going to signal to people both inside and outside the seriousness of your change management program. Don't let staff work in organisational backwaters. It can happen too easily with a change management program. Make sure that those people who are charged with your CSR program have in place the resources, and that they have the champions and the reporting relationships and the power to actually implement the changes that you've asked them to implement. Step 7, this is when we start to measure and report and celebrate success. And you might be looking for some quick wins. It may not feel like a quick win at this stage. You've probably already been working on your CSR program for quite some time by the time you get to stage 7. But typical tactics at this point might be your annual CSR report, your sustainability or triple bottom line report. Note that in this change management model, that is a typical communications tactic that comes at the end of the process, not at the beginning. Sometimes companies look around and they think, oh, we do good things. We've got lots of stuff going on here that we should be telling people about. If only they knew how good they were, they would love us. Let's put out a report. If you rush too soon to put out your report, you can risk a credibility gap. Reporting is a consolidation tactic. Now, I've given away half the game now because I've given you a huge clue about how to succeed in the game. So you can use those reports and the responses that you get to reports to take further corrective action and to understand what steps earlier on in the change management process you might need to revisit. Change never ends. It's an ongoing process, and you need to constantly replan, keep internal and external stakeholders involved, and understand what their interests are. And as John Cotter says, one of the world's leading change management experts whose ideas have strongly influenced the change management model underneath ExperienceCSR, in the final analysis, change sticks when it becomes the way we do things around here. So in order for CSR to become meaningful, it has to become part of an organisation's culture. Employees that are bought in and know how to integrate it into their day-to-day decision-making are the foundations of the socially responsible company. Now, I'm going to hand back to James at this point to, and there we are, there's the change management model, which we'll keep up there, and I'm going to hand back to James to take you through the next step of the game.
That's great. Thanks, Leeora. This